What's up, guys? Welcome back, and today we are going to do another stand-up comedy review, and today we are doing Nick Kroll's Little Big Boy. I'm going to preface this by saying, if you don't know who Nick Kroll is, I think you would be living under a rock at this point, but if you're maybe more of a conservative humor type person, Nick Kroll maybe not for you. Nick Kroll warned us in his interviews across podcast platforms when he was hyping up this Netflix special. That's where it's at, over on Netflix. Dropped, I think, September 27th, so I'm a bit behind with this review. But when he was promoting it all over the airwaves, he said, I talk a lot about what? Pooping his pants. And I was like, okay. I was a big Mouth fan. So I know the type of humor that Nick Kroll thinks is funny. I am a huge fan of Oh Hello on Broadway, which I think played into some of this stand-up. We'll get into that. And I'm a big fan of, the smaller jobs he's done. When he did that cartoon with Seth Rogen, and he's done voice acting. I mean, he did like over 40-some voices on his own show, Big Mouth. He's done voice acting all across the, scope of entertainment. Nick Kroll is a very, very funny guy. Did not know how he was going to do stand-up wise. His Oh Hello on Broadway, the play, if we'll call it that he did with his good friend John Mulaney years ago, which is also hosted on Netflix, was a stand-up comedy routine. They were doing comedy as characters, and they did turn it into a story, which was a play. So I think that got Nick Kroll a lot of experience, obviously, being on stage. I think he has a lot of that. He has great writer friends. He is very funny. So I had no worries about whether or not it was going to be funny. I was more concerned whether or not Nick Kroll was going to be a funny stand-up comedian, because it's different. Those are different tools. Those are different ways of being funny. You could be a funny writer and not be a good stand-up comedian, right? But as I saw Oh Hello on Broadway, I was pretty hopeful for this. So let's get into this. Little Big Boy starts off, and again, I try my best not to give away jokes. I will give little hints at jokes just because that's how we connect as comedy fans. So he starts off by telling a story of him as a child. He had eaten some fettuccine alfredo and then went to a karate class. And you can almost assume what happens with a knotted up gi. And the way he presents that joke was very funny. One of my favorite parts, just straight from that joke, is the way he said he was bowing at his fellow martial artists, and he was very sharp with the... I like Nick Kroll's physical comedy. He was very sharp with the bowing, and I've done jujitsu, and I know what it is to bow to your fellow classmates, and him being very strict with it was funny. I got a big kick out of that. I did take a lot of notes because Nick Kroll's thing was very, very funny, and I wanted to make sure I touched on a lot of things. First thing off the rip, when of the first line of his special, he was like, yeah, I went to school when everyone was straight. I thought that was kind of an interesting line because he was being a bit controversial, a bit rigid when he was like, hey, all this stuff that's going on now is new. We didn't know this back when we were kids, or at least it wasn't in our, specter of being. I didn't expect that from him. I don't know why I assumed Nick Kroll was a little more, sensitive to that type of stuff. They tried to cancel Big Mouth because of a few things, like one of their cartoon characters, but one of the black characters in the show was voiced by a not black actor. People tried to get the show canceled, and it was crazy. So I thought maybe he'd be a little careful. I was glad to see he didn't pull any punches on that one. And honestly, it was just true. And he was like, hey, back in my time, when we went to boy-girl parties, everyone was straight. And it was just kind of a funny thing to say that caught everyone's mind. It was like, yeah, they probably weren't, but that was how we all thought about it. And we'll get into real quick I would usually say my least favorite part of anytime he does talk about pooping his pants a lot. That's kind of the theme throughout the stand-up special, but he integrates it very well into stories. The funniest part, and I will say this, is I think it was the second time he talks about an occasion where he's about to shit himself. He talks about he felt the hairs on his arms stand up. And that part had me physically crying, laughing, just because if you've ever been in a situation where your stomach's starting to turn and you get that cold feeling and your hair starts to stand on your arms, things are about to go bad. For him to bring a moment that I think everyone has been in, which is a very vulnerable moment. And he says this in the thing. He goes, "What do you think you guys are getting here? You're getting the real vulnerable Nikki K." And you definitely got that. He talks about heartbreak, which, if you've watched Big Mouth, a lot of his humor is based off his own humiliation. Of all the things that he's done, the way he's kind of simped over women, which he touches on in the stand-up special, the way he talks about, "I'll love you no matter what, I'll pop my eyeballs out for you," and and he talks about heartbreak with a girl named Kate, and I thought that was really great, the way he made himself such a relatable guy, which was hard because as a stand-up comedian, I think most people look at stand-ups as very relatable. Nick Kroll, at least to the mass comedy fan population's knowledge, I don't think we see him as like a club comic where he's out in the cities all across the country, touring clubs, talking to fans. So you do see him as a Hollywood celebrity. So for him to be so relatable and tell like 3 or 4 stories of him shitting his pants and having his heart broken, and he talks about how he didn't tell anyone that he loved them until he was 31. He had his heart broken at 32, and I'll tell you what, like I think John Mulaney's stand-ups, one of his stand-up specials was called The Comeback Kid. If it was, Nick Kroll should have named this one The Callback Kid, because there are so many fantastic callbacks in this stand-up special. Just little jokes that he says that he kind of drops them in. He'll kind of just barely say something when he talks about early on in the special. He talks about his brother tried to teach him to drive a clutch when he was 16, and he was just kind of like, this is boring. I have other things I want to do. And you're like, okay, we got it. That was funny that his brother had to learn the hard way. He's talking about the age roles as, having an oldest, a middle, and a younger child, and the roles that they play in the family. He's talking about his oldest brother was expected to learn that stuff, and he was like, I have other things to do. Well, then later, towards the very end of the special, he's talking about him and his new girlfriend as he's trying to rectify his life from shitting his pants, losing, a girl, whatever. Now he's on a new date with a new woman in a romantic situation. And now he's presented with the opportunity where he's renting a car and all they have is a clutch. So he brings it back all the way full circle. And so we'll touch on a few more things. One of my favorite moments in the entire stand-up special, when he's talking about Kate, he goes, the first woman I ever told I love is also the woman who broke my heart. And he goes, and she got me good. And the way he holds it out was one of my favorite parts of the entire special. She got me good. And you could feel the pain through the laughter, which is why we all love stand-up. That's what stand-up specials are for. Take shitty, not using a pun, which I don't know why he kept doing that, but he was like, I'm a naughty little pun boy, and he would act like a goblin or something and like run behind a stool. I don't know why he was doing that anytime he would say a pun. But yes, Nick Kroll did a great job of taking quote-unquote shitty situations, bad times in life, and making them just ridiculously funny. One of my equally favorite, I won't call it a second favorite part of the special, is also when he's talking about Kate and why Kate broke up with him, and she said that she just wasn't attracted to him. The way he reacts, the way he shows himself reacting, where he's like bouncing about, he's going, cool. No, cool. That's totally the reaction I would have, hoped to get. And like he's bouncing, just showing that like internally he's losing control of his faculties. I was fucking rolling through this whole special. I mean, his inner monologue of self-criticism. It's the voice of Jason Statham. Again, Nick Kroll does a great job of using his voice acting abilities. You heard most of his characters, whether it be Club Soda Kenny or whatever his name is, the the Jersey Shore dude, the whatever it is, kind of the douchebag where he played the douche in the cartoon. It's that same voice. I forget the name of the character from the Kroll show. But then you heard like Gil Faison from Oh Hello. You heard a lot of the characters from Big Mouth come out in this special as other parts of his own personality, where in this one, his inner monologue was Jason Statham, and he used that, and it was very, very funny. He had He had a couple Fast and the Furious / Vin Diesel quips, so he must be a fan of action movies. The unforgettable part, I think Nick Kroll did a good job of. I noticed in comedy specials, each one of them tried to do at least one thing that you'll take home with you. So that way, you know, like with Kevin Hart, it was all right, all right, all right. People said that shit forever after that came out. Larry the Cable Guy, get her done. They always try to send you home with something where from now on you'll think about them when you hear that. Weird thing to be thought of for. But when there was no transition, right? He didn't really have a transition. It was when he first introduced Statham as his inner monologue. He was about to go on to the Kate bit, I believe. And that's when he was like, I'm going to tell you guys something. Quiet down. Everybody, quiet down. Hold on. Are you listening? Quiet down. And you could tell he was like, he was changing the energy of the room to like, hey, listen in. Hey, listen close. Listen close. Forget what I just said. Listen in. And he's like, when you lift up your ass cheek, the fart doesn't make any noise. And he went off on that for like 2 minutes and then immediately bang into the next joke. And I was like, that was so funny. You missed the fact that he didn't have a segue into the next joke. That was the segue. He just said something that you'll never forget. Anytime you ever have to fart or something, you're going to think of that. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Comedy is such a crazy thing. And we talked about it. I'm going to wrap this up. Nick Kroll is one of the best voice actors, and I mean, he's one of the best comedians of our time on TV and now on stand-up. That was a great comedy special. That was the first one in a while where I didn't have to look and be like, when is this thing over? How much more time does this thing got? And I never checked to see how much longer it has. That was a solid hour, and that's hard to do. You know, most people kind of bow out 15, 20 minutes in. You know, we're like, all right, we get it. With him, Sebastian Maniscalco, Shane Gillis, there's been a couple here recently that when I watch their stand-ups, I'm locked in. But then there's other ones, you know, not ones that I'm going to dog, where I can't. I watch it for 10, 15 minutes, I cut it off, and then if I'm chilling later, maybe I'll turn it back on. This one, you can go all the way through. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Go check it out on Netflix. Support Nick Kroll and let me know what you think. We'll see you in the next one. Love you.